Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So on our last video, we actually hit that big first major milestone of 1,000 subs. This channel has grown so fast and the support has been so overwhelming. All of my thanks go out to you guys. This couldn't be possible without each and every one of you. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of that continued support. So for today's video, before the eye patch goes away, I feel like I just have to do this deck archetype. We were not able to pull a mystery card today. So what we have is a pillage and plunder, a thief, a steal your stuff type deck, where all of the cards are designed to either take a card from the opponent, take an ability from the opponent, copy a card from the opponent, something along those lines. I feel like it's just thematic to go with the eye patch, the pirate, the pillage and plunder, thief style deck. And so really quickly, running through all of the cards that we have. So as we're pulling in cards from the opponent, there's one card that's going to be buffed up by almost all of those actions, and that's Collector. So we did go ahead and throw a Collector in here. So it's almost like a Devil Dino Collector deck, but it's just a massively, wickedly modified version. And before we dive in, as a disclaimer, this deck is probably not going to be S tier. This is probably going to be more in line with a meme style deck. It's going to be able to create some funny swings and steal some wins from your opponent with different cards such as Rogue, White Queen, Morph, or Leader. So first up, going through the steal your cards. So Mantis being the first one, if we are able to play Mantis on a location that an opponent played a card that turn, we get to steal a card from their deck. And then we have Cable. Cable on reveal, put the bottom card of your opponent's deck into your hand. So we're going to be able to steal some more of their stuff. And the idea behind this deck is if we can steal enough of their pieces, maybe we can make a makeshift version and do part of the combo that they want. The next card being Morph. So Morph is a very all or nothing type card. It can create some really strong swings. So sometimes you're going to copy a 6 power card and just propel your power level way over your opponent's. And then other times you're going to copy a rock. This one is very hit or miss, but it felt like I needed to add this in to a steal your stuff type deck. Next up we have Rogue, which Rogue on reveal, steal an ongoing ability from a random enemy card at this location. So you're going to be able to steal something like a Devil Dino, something like a Strong Guy, a Khazar, an Onslaught, an Iron Man. Some really strong ongoing abilities are starting to work their way back into the meta. And so I think this card would be pretty valuable in a steal your stuff type deck. The next steal your stuff type card we have is White Queen. So White Queen on reveal, draw a copy of the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. So in the last set of buffs, this card actually got buffed up quite a bit. Previously it was draw a copy of a 6 cost card in your opponent's hand, and if they didn't have a 6 cost card, then you just didn't draw anything. But now it's going to draw the highest cost card, whether that be 4, 1, 5, 6, it's going to draw whatever the highest is. And then the last steal your stuff or borrow your stuff or utilize your resources is Leader. So Leader is a really difficult card to use. He can create some really big swings, and a lot of times the downside with Leader is that you don't benefit from the cards that are played on turn 6 as much as your opponent. So let's say they drop an Odin to re-trigger some really strong on reveal abilities, but you just resummon an Odin and it doesn't have a whole lot of upside. So the idea with this steal your stuff type deck is that we have enough of their resources that hopefully we will benefit almost as much as they do from the cards that they play on turn 6. And then quickly running through the rest of the cards. The rest of the cards are here just as support to kind of help enable for the games that we don't really draw good things from our opponent or that just aren't rolling in our favor. So we have Agent 13. Agent 13 is going to give us a random card, which kind of feels like it goes with the take your stuff, take random things and put it into your deck. Agent 13 may be able to help us in that regard, and it helps us buff up the Collector. We have Falcon. Falcon is going to let us steal more of the opponent's stuff. It's going to let us redrop our Agent 13, our Mantis, our Yondu, and any card that we return to our hand is going to count as a buff towards Collector. This is going to be a cheap discounted Moon Girl as long as we can afford to not have those 1-drops onto the board. And then additionally, this helps us clear up space for Leader. So we want to make sure we have as much space as possible for Leader. So if the opponent is running a Zoo deck, we're going to be able to steal as much of that Zoo as possible. And then we have Sentinel, which on reveal, add another Sentinel to your hand. This is just a good kind of filler card, so if you don't get good draws otherwise, you're going to be able to get a pretty decent upside in Sentinel. And then rounding it out, we have Devil Dino. So between the steal your cards, the pull your cards back into your hand, we are almost always going to be pushing our hand space to the max. So Devil Dino should be a really solid card to be a 12 to 14 power finisher at the end of the game. So that is the general idea of the deck. Let's go ahead and jump into some games and see how it plays. All right, so first up we have no lucks given. So I think what we do is we go ahead and drop our Yondu here. On turn 1, that's going to mill a card, not necessarily giving it to us, but it's stealing it away from what they can use. So this is like a pillage and plunder. We get their Nakia, so that's pretty important, knowing that they're running a buff deck, and they're not going to be able to get the biggest buff, the card hand buff. And so I think what we do is we go ahead and drop our collector into the sewer system. He's going to get buffed up over time, so I think it's okay to have him dropped there. And then they drop a Bucky Barnes, so they're running some form of destruction deck as well. So we need to be, knowing that, we need to be careful taking their cards or copying their cards with something like a Morph. Do we hold off on Morph for now? I think maybe we do. I think we play our Mantis in mid, anticipating them dropping something additional to try and destroy this Bucky Barnes. And then we'll drop our Falcon to the right, and then we can reposition our cards, our Yondu and our Mantis. So we do get our first steal with Forge. Okay. And so they're running a pretty all-out buff deck, it seems like. And so we do trigger our collector a couple of times with the Falcon pullback, and we're going to be able to drop these again to get some additional upside out of them. They have 3 cards left in hand. Where do we think they're going to play? I don't think they're going to play in sewer system. That one's already pretty solid. I think they either don't play at all or they drop into Titan. That's going to be my read, my guess. But they very well could drop into Grand Central as well. So, oh, they do drop into Titan. So beautiful. Let's see what card we pillage and plunder. So this is going to take out the last 2 cards in their deck. We know that they now only have 3 cards left. And so we take their last card in Carnage. So that's going to be their second destruction engine. So I think here what we do is we go ahead and drop... Do we go ahead and drop our Morph here? I think we do. I think we drop our Morph, but where do we drop our Morph at? So we know that they've used 2 of their destructions in Deathlock and Carnage. So I think the odds of getting a destroy your stuff type card out of Morph is relatively low. Oh, and this part feels bad as well. After turn 5, put a card from each player's hand here. So that, if we accidentally pull into Carnage, that'll feel pretty bad. But I think we have to go with the risk. I think we go with the Morph over here because I think we have a pretty good chance of having a good upside out of whatever we copy at this point, because we've limited. So they only have 1 card left in hand. So this is going to be big. What do they have? What do they have left? So they have a Gamora left. So that gives us some pretty good information here. The only thing they have left is Gamora, and that's actually going to play into Grand Central. So we have this turn completely free. So we just have, we got this. They can't win. So we just have to drop 2 power here and 2 power here. And so that's going to be super easy to do. We're going to go ahead and drop our White Queen and our Sentinel, and they can't compete. We stole and destroyed enough of their cards that they ran out of options, and so that made our Morph very, very consistent, because towards the end of the game, really the only things you're going to have left, or the only resources you're going to have left, are typically 4, 5, and 6 power cards, and so you have more chances to hit a high roll later in the game. So very, very, very fun. Let's see if we can keep doing it. Okay, so here we have Davy Masta. We have Mantis in hand, but I don't want to drop him just yet. I don't know if they're running a late game deck, and hitting a lane where they dropped a card is quite a bit more difficult when you don't know where they're going to place those cards. So I'm just going to play a collector in mid. They dropped a Morbius. So we need to be careful about what we morph, because it could potentially be a big major discard card. But if we're able to steal enough of their things, then we can get some upside out of it as well. And then the last location being Mindscape. At the start of turn 6, swap hands. So this is one always interrupts what you want to do quite a bit. And unless we get we could potentially get a second Mindscape from Mirror Dimension here, which would then swap the hands back, and so we'd have the original hands, but we'd have a brief glimpse at what cards the other person had. So we could kind of play off of that knowledge, and I kind of hope it goes that way. But I'm gonna gamble and say that they're gonna play their card in Mindscape. Oh my gosh, the reads. And so we do get the Mantis trigger off of the Mindscape play. And so we steal their Swarm. So we know they're not going to be able to swarm the board by discarding Swarm over and over and over again. So that's pretty key. If we can steal something like an Apocalypse, and they're running an Apocalypse Swarm deck, then that's going to be really, really big. And so what do you guys say we drop our White Queen here? That's going to trigger our Collector because we copy a card and pull it into our hand. But it's also going to give us some information about what he has in his hand. So does he have a Hela? Does he have an Apocalypse already? That gives us that information. And so I think we do. I think we play that and we see what he has. So you have your highest cost card, a Gambit. Interesting. So we need to watch out for that. And he does destroy his Gambit. And he destroys a Collector and a Moon Knight. And so if he brings back Gambit, that's going to kill, or it's going to trigger at least once, but interesting. And this is ongoing. So we can actually steal this from Morbius on the last turn if we want to. And so I think what we do is we send Devil Dino here. Or do we steal it this turn and leave ourselves open for dropping a leader next turn? So they don't have an Apocalypse. They discarded quite a few of their cards. They don't have much in hand. So I don't think we need to necessarily do like a Morph here. So I think what we do is we drop our Devil Dino and we wait and see. So they had Colleen Wing as the only card that was in their hand. And so now we're going to send our cards off. And then the second Mindscape should trigger and we should swap back. If not, feels really, really bad. We gave them a lot of resources. But yeah, okay, so we start pulling them back in. They're going to have only one card in their hand because of the Mindscape location, which the Mirror Dimension copied Mindscape. So it's triggering twice. So very, very lucky for us. What do we say? Do we want to drop a Gambit and a Rogue? Okay. Or do we want to drop a leader? So Rogue would steal Morbius's ability, making him a 0 power card. And then Gambit would destroy one of their cards at random. I think the more consistent play there would have been leader in this location. Since we're already winning 2 locations, it would copy whatever they did here and here to make sure that we keep the upside. Overall, very, very fortunate that we were able to get the double Mindscape. We were able to get some pretty interesting reads off of the Mantis and the White Queen. We took one of their big major discard cards in a Swarm. And so very, very fun. This deck shouldn't be good. And I don't think it's going to be a huge cube type swing just because we never know if we're going to win until very late in the game. But I think it's fun to play nonetheless because you're just interrupting and disrupting your opponent in a different way than you typically would. Next up we have Rayquaza. So in our hand we have our Yondu, we have Falcon, so we're going to be able to trigger Yondu at least twice. So I think we drop him just without worry this turn. It gives us a little bit of information. So they had a Warpath, so that tells me they're going to only really want to try and play into 2 locations, or they would have. And then maybe they had like an Onslaught to double his ongoing effect. But it gives us a pretty good read on what they're playing. And so maybe they have some other strong ongoing abilities, and our Rogue may come in pretty handy here. I don't want to drop Falcon just yet, just for a 1-drop, a 1/1 so maybe we draw into Mantis this next turn. Or maybe we draw into our Collector so that we can start getting the upside from that. Which we don't. So do we ever play Morph into the Dark Dimension? That's going to hold him until really, really late game. so that we can hopefully copy something really strong. I think we're going to do that. I think that lets them get rid of some of their lower cost cards so that we can hopefully hit a high priority target on that last turn. So they have Captain America, whose ongoing ability is kind of lackluster a little bit, in that it just gives +1 to the other cards in that location. So he becomes essentially a 3 cost 6 power card in that lane if it's maxed out, and that's only if it's maxed out. But I think for this turn we drop both our Cable and our Sentinel to steal one of their cards, get our first card steal going, and then Sentinel just to pump some additional power onto the board. So we steal a Nightcrawler. So that tells me maybe they're running some form of almost like a zoo. I do think we probably need to do something like Devil Dino here. And do we ever drop Nightcrawler as well? So next turn we're going to be able to do Leader, and we can move Nightcrawler to wherever they play cards to try and match and make sure we can match whatever they're playing. So it looks like we would most likely drop our Nightcrawler here or move him here. What a cool Ant-Man variant. So they're going to cap this one out. They're going to get some upside from that. We get to play one card, they get to play one card, and then we're going to copy a random card with their morph. So I think what we do is something like this. Unless we think stealing their ongoing ability here is better, but I think not. I think this will let us further our lead here. It will let us kind of push forward, hopefully, our lead here. Well, no, because then let's say they drop a Chavez. That's going to put them at 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That would put us at 22, 20. So where do we play then? I think maybe we still do. And we just try and win this left and right lane, knowing that they're probably going to drop at least some kind of card or resource in this mid. That's my read, and I'm sticking to it. So they drop a card, so I would anticipate an Iron Man. Okay, that's pretty nice. But, of course, we're not competing for that lane just because they had too many more resources. We would have had 24 total. We do push this lane. What did we copy with our Morph? We copied an 8 power card with our Morph. So we copied a Crossbones. Coming in at 8 power, and then our Nightcrawler move over was able to match their 10 power Namor, and we won the Murder World by more than they won Atlantis. Guys, that was beautiful. This deck is... We've won 3 in a row with this deck now. They're low cube games, of course, but we're still putting up a fight, and I really thought it was going to be a struggle all the way through. And so this deck is so fun. If you can get a good read on what your opponent's playing, you can create some pretty big momentum swings for yourself. Okay, so starting off, we have some pretty good cards in hand. We have our Yondu, we have Agent 13 and Mantis to be able to generate additional cards into our hand. And then ideally we'll draw into Falcon at some point so that we can re-trigger these effects. And then Collector would also be really, really nice to draw into. But we don't draw into it just yet. So they dropped a Sunspot, but I don't really anticipate them dropping an additional card this turn. And so I'm just going to drop an Agent 13. So they do drop another card. They drop a Nightcrawler. Our Agent 13 pulls into an Iron Man, which is a pretty solid, pretty strong pull. So the last location is Lemuria. So the way that works is we can drop our Mantis and then our Falcon. It's going to reveal, and depending on where they drop cards next turn, we'll determine if we get that Mantis pull or not. But I think that's what we do here. So they would have to drop a card into Strange Academy this turn, I believe, for us to get that upside. And so since we can't drop anything else here, I think we just go ahead and drop our Sentinel into Hellfire Club. And so they did not drop a card. So they have Wong. So that's going to be interesting. So Wong's ongoing ability is on reveal, your abilities at this location happen twice. So this is one of the big proponents of like the Exodia combo, where you drop a gambit after a Mystique, a Wong, and an Onslaught or something like that, and it just destroys the entire opposite side of the board. So I think we need to steal Wong's ability here. We can then drop our Yondu, who is going to double destroy their cards. And then I think we also drop Mantis here. I think let's reverse that. Let's do Mantis and then Yondu. So I think we reverse it. That way we pull 2 cards if possible here. And then if not, then we destroy 2 cards. And then if we hit both, okay, perfect. So they're gonna double discard. So they're playing an Apocalypse deck. So that's pretty good for our leader, knowing that they'll probably drop that on the very last turn. And the Gambit, we only have 2 cards. We only have 2 cards right now, and so the Gambit doesn't come in too terrible here. So we do steal their Wong's double on reveal ongoing ability, and then we get Mantis, who's going to steal 2 of their cards for us. And then we get our Yondu, who's going to destroy their last card in deck. So we know for this final turn, they're probably going to drop their Apocalypse. So depending on where they drop it at, I think is big. I think what we can do, I think it's probably safe to say they drop it, oh boy, that they drop it here so that they swing all of the lanes, right? But if they do drop it here, then we're not going to win this lane by enough. Oh, yes, we will. Yes. So it was going to be a tiebreaker. Okay, this is beautiful. So if we just copied one version of their Apocalypse and it was here, it would just be a tiebreaker because it would be their 18, 20, whatever power Apocalypse versus ours. But since we have Wong's ability, the leader is going to trigger their on-reveal ability twice. So we're going to copy 2 Apocalypses here, and I really want to snap, but I also want to see this play out. So I anticipate an Apocalypse in the left lane. As long as they don't drop it into Lemuria, we're fine. I anticipate an Apocalypse in the left lane. We're going to win the right lane because of leader's ability, and then we are going to double copy their Apocalypse. And then they also have Swarm, which Swarm, depending on where they place it. Oh, shoot. Okay. So they place, oh my gosh. So we are going to win. Are we going to win all 3 lanes? Leader, you're a madman. You are a absolute madman. I really wish I would have snapped because I think they would have let it go through. We would have got our 8 cubes, but I just wanted to see that play out so badly. And so we double copied their Apocalypse. We double copied both Swarms that they dropped down. Oh my gosh, that Rogue into the Wong was just... All right, so we do have the Collector in our hand. So I'm going to forego dropping Agent 13 this turn. That way I can get Collector on the board. I can start buffing him up as we do our disruption shenanigans. So let's go ahead and drop our Collector into the hub. We know that that's not going to be a downside or a negative location for us. So it's a pretty good location for us to drop that. And then they ran a Psylocke. So they are probably either running a Sandman, a Mr. Negative, and typically I wouldn't drop Mantis this early, but they ramped up into 4 energy. They're not going to be able to drop whatever 4 power card they want into Big House. So I think they either drop it into the hub or Westview. I'm going to go with Westview here, which I'm actually a little bit torn on that. I don't know for sure. Now that I said it, I'm not sold. Do we go back? And I would, if it was me, I would drop it into Westview. That way I can start stacking my more powerful cards into these remaining 3 lanes or three locations, and not make this an easier location for my opponent to swing by only having 2 spots that are more than 1 power. And so I think that's what we do. I think we lock that in, and they did drop it into Big House. They made us look like a fool. Our read was off there, which is going to happen. We do get their Jubilee, which is nice. They would have had that next turn. And then we have a bishop. So what do we want to do here? Do we do like a white queen, or do we do both a cable and a falcon to pull up our lower cost cards here? The only reason I would opt for the bishop route is that it can continue to buff up over time. So we pull our cards in with falcon, we drop them back, they're going to continue to buff. I think we lock this in though. I think the 3 cost play is a little bit too awkward for our 4 energy. So let's lock this in. See what are they doing? Ziggish, what are you doing? Never let them know your next move, right? And so this being the last turn that cards can be played here, we did steal their white tiger, so maybe they're anticipating pushing power into that lane via that, but we were able to take that. So if we can draw into our rogue here, which it's a very big long shot. If we could draw into our rogue here, that would give us a lot of upside. So I think we go ahead and drop our bishop here, and anticipate that we're not going to draw into our rogue. If we do, I think we win this game just from being able to steal their ongoing ability. And then if not, we have a Mantis. I anticipate they drop resources here to try to maybe compete with this lane, or maybe they think it's too far gone. I actually think they think it's too far gone, so they stack resources into Kunlun. So let's go ahead and do all of our cards here, and then I think that's the play. And so they drop it into Kunlun because the other one was too far gone. And so then we steal their Professor X, which is not going to do us much good because it's going into the last turn, and we destroy their Mr. Negative. So they were running a Mr. Negative deck. They just didn't hit that high roll. I think drawing into, okay, I was going to say I think drawing into Rogue here is our only avenue to win. However, we are already winning here and here. So I think we play leader into this mid lane because they're going to have to swing one of these two. So what else does a Mr. Negative typically run? They run an Arnim Zola potentially, which could be bad. Could be really bad because then they would drop it here and push that power. Ooh, is that what they're running? Are they running an Arnim Zola? And if so, and it hits the Iron Man, then we win. And then if not, and they play power here, or maybe they play a Captain Marvel, do we think they drop 3 cards? I think we want to make sure we get as much upside here as possible. So unless they drop a Captain Marvel here, which is weird for a Mr. Negative deck, I think we lock in leader mid. We were back and forth on it a little bit. And they do have, what resource did they drop there? Oh, and it's Dr. Doom. Oh, that feels so bad. Dr. Doom is not a card I would have anticipated them dropping. Had we dropped our leader here, we would have copied Dr. Doom here and pushed power into both of these. We would have won both the left and right lane. So this deck is very, very dependent on getting a good read. And knowing that they didn't get the inverse, I should have known that they weren't going to flood the board because typically they're only going to have like 3 cost cards. 3 cost or higher that they're shooting to be inversed. And since they didn't inverse their cards, the safe play would have been leader here. Well, you can't win them all. I think overall we had a pretty good idea or pretty good play line here. We just didn't finish through with that execution. Next up we have Regis, and the first location that we get is Tinker's Workshop. So I'm going to want to drop Collector onto the board this first turn. That's going to let us get the most upside out of him with our Agent 13s, our cables, our Mantises. That's going to let us make sure we get the most upside out of it. So do we think he drops a card this turn? If he does, I think he tries to compete for Baxter Building, just because that gives a pretty good push all the way across the board. But he also didn't drop a card last turn when he had 2 energy, so I don't think he does. I think we hold Mantis in hand for this turn, because last time he had 2 energy, he didn't drop anything that turn. And so we draw into Omega Red here. So now that he has 3 energy, do we anticipate him dropping something? And if so, where? I feel like Baxter Building is the most ideal location, but at the same time, he would likely drop a Nakia. And so I think actually we just pass here. It was in Baxter Building, so they drop a wave. Unfortunate. We could have gotten our Mantis trigger, but we didn't. So with the wave though, we are going to be able to drop an early leader here to see what they're going to trigger. So I think I'm going to drop our leader here. And so then if they drop Odin to re-trigger wave, we will then pull an Odin, which will re-trigger Agent 13 and leader, to then re-trigger another Odin, to then re-trigger another Agent 13 and a leader. So we would get a decent amount of upside out of cards drawn from Agent 13, if that is the route that he goes. And so where's the Odin coming in? So we are going to max out the rest of this location, which may give away some of our strategic advantage here, but it's just we couldn't pass it up. That gives us quite a bit of power. And so Black Cat was actually a decent card to pull from Agent 13 because it then discarded at the end of our turn. At the end of our turn, and so not bad at all. I think what we do here is we drop into our White Queen over on this right hand side. That's going to let us know we're of course not going to be able to draw next turn, but it's going to let us know what kind of card they have. Magic, and so all right, so we then pulled their magic, so that would give us the advantage of knowing that they could drop magic, and I think because of that they went ahead and just went ahead and conceded. So overall, this deck list feels very troll. It's very fun. You have to kind of think and play it strategically, but we have had pretty decent luck with it. We've dropped 3 games and won 7. Not the best deck we've ever piloted, but it did perform a little bit better than I thought it would. And I mean, it's a very small sample size, so of course that could change. As long as you're able to read what the opponent's playing and where they're playing it, you can get some pretty good upside out of leader, out of Mantis, out of Yondu Cable. Very fun deck. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. I've wanted to do a thief deck for a while, but I just never felt like I was going to be able to make it good, because Quinjet would feel really good in this deck for all of the cards that you're stealing. He may also take up too much space and then make dropping an effective leader at the end of the game hard. I don't know, but overall I very much enjoyed this deck list. I don't think this is as strong as like an Infinite discard deck, but I do think it is I do think it is formed well enough that it is able to sneak and steal away wins where the opponent's not anticipating it, because it is not a meta deck. But I am going to go ahead and end the video here. Please let me know what you guys thought of the video. Let me know if you want to see more kind of creative builds like this on our down days. So since I wasn't able to pull a mystery card, we didn't do our mystery card draft. So we kind of had to game plan and come up with an idea of our own. And this one felt like the most fun, the most thematic for the eye patch while I'm wearing it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.